Hi, I'm Ethan Chazen, a New York City-based small business growth coach. And if you've watched any of the 600 plus videos on my YouTube channel, you'll know that I often shine a light on organizations that have built amazing and not so amazing workplace cultures. Well, this has been on my mind for a long time. I am today excited to share my latest deep dive into an organization that, in this particular case, does not do a great job building a great workplace culture. And that is, drum roll please, Chipotle, Mexican food. So we're going to spend some time going over Chipotle. I'm going to do an assessment of the things that they have done over time, going back to the year of 2014, that indicate to leadership in other organizations what are some things that you should and should not do when it comes to building culture. So understand that this is the retail industry. It's fast food. So they organizations who deal in this industry have to deal with certain challenges. So let's go back to May 2014 and Direct Action Everywhere website, Why Workers Hate Chipotle. So I promise I'm going to do an incredibly deep dive, but stay with me throughout because the lessons that Chipotle have to share are instructive to other organizations who want to build great workplaces. So why workers hate Chipotle. So this goes back to May 2014. Steve Ells, the CEO at the time, took in $300 million while his workers were struggling to be paid a living wage. So New York Times wrote back in 2014 about how Chipotle's own shareholders overwhelmingly voted down an executive pay package for Steve Ellis, who's received $300 million in recent years, while paying employees less than $10 an hour. So this, going back 11 years, as labor protests against abuses by fast food chains like Chipotle were happening all over the world. So this is something that the media has covered with Chipotle Mexican food over and over again. Chipotle and its corporate leadership, their behaviors are bad, not just for employees, but animals and for America. They talk about sustainability, for example, while refusing any sort of environmental audit or accounting of their business processes. They brag about how much they love their workers while driving them to insanity with time, pressure, and low wages. And I'm going to spend a lot of time today talking about the many things that Chipotle has done going back over a decade in this assessment and why the fact that they brag about how well they treat their employees is so incredibly tone deaf and out of touch with reality. So smart organizations, smart corporations can no longer continue to exploit their employees. They can't do it. I'm focusing on Chipotle because of the stories that I've heard over and over again about this particular organization, so that an organization that would treat its employees so horribly, yet claiming that they were pro-employee, is beyond mind-boggling to me. So we're going to go a little bit deeper. Chipotle's outbreak of poisoned food is a risk management failure, a quality control failure. So going back to August 2018, since 2015, Chipotle has suffered multiple scandals of food-borne illnesses. The latest Chipotle outbreak, now this is 2018, has left more than 700 people ill. What does this Mexican fast food establishment have yet to learn? They've suffered multiple scandals from 2015 to this article, 2018. The latest Chipotle outbreak has made over 700 people sick. So it's been going on, this food poisoning, at this particular news story at a city, Powell, Ohio. The chain Chipotle has never learned lessons from its prior failures. These outbreaks have happened over and over and over again at Chipotle. And this is one of the reasons I chose to do Chipotle in this video, because it's still going on to this way. Why can't this fast food establishment seem to get out of its own way? And the answer to this rhetorical question is institutional failure at the top levels of the organization to run a successful business in terms of treating its employees with respect, civility, and caring. We talk about these foodborne illness, these sicknesses that are happening. There was an outbreak in Sterling, Virginia, going back in 2017. Sterling is an area of Virginia that I'm particularly connected to because I had one of my internships in my MBA program working in Sterling. There was a Chipotle location where people were getting sick. So at this particular location, the CEO, Els, cited a sick employee as the cause, and that he said in a statement, public relations statement, that the company would undergo relentless training of its employees on the company's policies. So when an organization focuses on one incident, the takeaway for other business leaders to apply to their own businesses, you're barking up the wrong tree. You're focused on the wrong thing. That's a Band-Aid solution. If you've got hundreds and thousands of people getting sick, your employees and your customers in numerous locations, saying that in one location where one employee got sick, you're going to do significant training, that's not because of one sick employee. It's ineffective leadership and risk management, quality control, across the organization, not just at one or two locations. So this 2015 Chipotle outbreak occurred shortly after Chipotle launched an innovation to include locally sourced food in their recipes. A civil lawsuit filed against Chipotle in January of 2016 alleged that the chain's foodborne illness outbreaks were at least partially caused by the company's decision to shift the process of preparing produce from central kitchens to the individual locations, which added about 1,000 points of food sourcing for contamination, and things like cutting raw meat on a cutting board and then flipping it over and not having time because you're so overwhelmed and understaffed to wash the cutting board so that you cut on the other side and flip it over. And then you're then cutting food and serving food that was prepared on the side with raw meat. I mean, come on. When you have absolute lack of caring for your employees and customers, this kind of stuff happens repeatedly. And they did and have been happening at Chipotle, at least going back a decade in my assessment, going back to 2014. Okay? Whether the Chipotle outbreaks were caused by incorrectly prepared ingredients, employees working while they were sick, or different food quality assurance practices, preventing future scandals, meaning that you need one standard operating procedure followed across all locations. And as I dive into Chipotle, one of the things that becomes readily apparent is the lack of consistency in business operating procedures from location to location. And that's just basic corporate mandate 101 for having a certain level of consistency and quality in all your organizations. If you don't have one set of standards that are universally applied, this is the kind of stuff that can and will happen. So all organizations like Chipotle can implement a risk-based approach to policy management and risk management by identifying who the stakeholders of the policy are, assessing the root cause risks by engaging employees and contractors who are closest to the threats, and getting feedback from your frontline staff. Those people who do the work and are responsible for the work, you ask them if your procedures are suitable, and you modify your business practices based on guidance from them. You monitor the effectiveness of your controls at each location, which I'm going to talk to you in a while. When corporate would come out and audit individual locations, the individual location managers were given heads up by other managers. So they knew when the audit was coming, they could momentarily conform to standards and go back to not implementing standards the rest of the time. You need a proactive incident and complaint management for your employees, none of which exists at Chipotle, to the best of my knowledge, at least that has been implemented. And you've got to repeat assessments or audits regularly to identify new risks. None of that was done at Chipotle. So employees are getting sick of working for Chipotle, literally. So let's go to December 2019. How Chipotle got employee engagement wrong and what you can learn from this. There's so many lessons based on everything that Chipotle's done that you shouldn't emulate. This is a case study in how not to run your organization. So going back to 2019, December 2019, recent news of Chipotle's CEO stating that employees need to call a nurse to determine if they're sick. Oh, and not just that they have a hangover. It's kind of shocking because it sends a message to all your employees. We don't trust you, but you should trust us. Could you imagine when your employees are getting sick saying, we need to determine using our healthcare professionals that you're not actually sick, that you just didn't go and get shit-faced before you came to work? This is troubling on so many levels because Chipotle identified that sick employees were one of the many causes of their foodborne outbreaks going back to 2014 that has plagued them going back even farther to when, before I started assessing this, in 2008. It appears time and time again that Chipotle is willing to damage employee relationships and risk another outbreak to save a few dollars by pointing the blame squarely on employees who were feeling the effects of being drunk, of being hungover. If you don't know Chipotle, it's a multi-billion-dollar restaurant chain with over 2,500 locations and an unprecedented stock value that even McDonald's would kill for. Yet for all of its positives at Chipotle Mexican food, growth, brand success, and of course, popularity, because I have to admit, I have frequented Chipotle in the past as an alternative, as a healthy alternative to other fast food venues. Chipotle, nonetheless, has suffered from operational issues that would have bankrupted lesser restaurant companies like Long John Silver, Pizza Hut, all those other organizations. It suffered from these operational issues and problems that were entirely self-inflicted. Vulnerability to foodborne illness, which caused the company to suffer major setbacks on numerous occasions. So in 2015 alone, this article is 2019. In 2015 alone, Chipotle had 5 foodborne outbreaks that infected hundreds of customers. They quickly responded by closing multiple restaurants, creating an aggressive food safety. The plan that they implemented was to reduce the risk of illness to zero. Their strategies at the time appeared to eliminate any further outbreaks, though the root causes were never identified. That's problematic. How do you figure out what not to do in the future if you don't learn from what you did in the past? Then 2018 comes along. They suffer another setback, as I mentioned, in Powell, Ohio. 700 people get sick because they didn't implement broad sweeping changes because they didn't learn their lessons the prior times. They determined in 2018 in Powell, Ohio, that the root cause for the illnesses was improper food holding. This time, Chipotle senior executives said they would add an employee knowledge assessment to their daily food safety program. So, to rebuild employee and customer confidence, Chipotle underwent multiple food safety employee wellness campaigns for 2 years. The modifications that they put in place required employees to check in with a nurse, as then a different CEO, because they keep changing their CEOs, Brian Nichols, stated that the nurse validates that it's not a hangover. Yeah, you're really sick, and then we pay for the day off to get healthy again. Talk about a conflicting message you're sending to employees. On one hand, they're saying, we don't want you to work when you're sick. On the other hand, they're saying, we get to determine if you're sick, not you. We're the judge, we're the jury. So what happens at Chipotle, which does happen, unfortunately, in many other corporations, they seem to lose their original intent of protecting sick employees and customers, only to go after sick policy offenders, which, if you think about it, risks the alienation of thousands of employees. The fallout from having employees being evaluated by a nurse of corporate's choosing before calling out sick shows a number of negative aspects. Lack of fairness. Employees could protest. I think paid sick days should be without stipulations like paid vacations. And how I get sick shouldn't be a determining factor of when I get time off for illness. It also shows an inherent lack of trust that Chipotle has towards its employees, had in the past and continues to this day, as you'll see later on as I uncover many other, unfortunately for them, Chipotle, many other issues. Lack of clear communication, lack of clarity. Clearly defining sickness is an inexact science for any company. How can a nurse objectively test the validity of morning sickness versus migraine sickness, as an example? Lack of engagement. When employees feel managers are hiding behind corporate policies that aren't mutually beneficial to the employee and the organization, the employee is not going to go out of her or his or their way. I'm not going to volunteer for work when it's my scheduled day off or stay later because I don't like you. I don't trust you because of the way you treat me. And ultimately, all of this goes back to a lack of accountability that organizations far too often exhibit. Best employees feel punished by policies that are intended to weed out a few of the offenders. So if there are violators, and they're in the minority, they're the few and far between of employees who take advantage of policies, well, they should be disciplined on a case-by-case basis, right? This is 101. So in the hopes of saving a few dollars by catching those sick day violators, Chipotle risks damaging their workplace culture by creating an environment of disengagement and mistrust at a time when the war on talent was, a few years ago and continues to be now, a prevailing problem. If Chipotle were honest with themselves about root causes of people, employees, and customers getting sick, they would have adopted more behavior-based solutions to implement in their 2,500 locations, starting with having the right systems in place, maintaining those systems effectively, and managing a culture through effective employee feedback mechanisms, which don't exist at Chipotle. Even then, if they had done those things, having great systems and tools will fall short if your employees aren't trained and aren't engaged to do the right things. And I say this time and time again in my consulting. Managers must hold themselves and employees accountable to achieve results. I have spent significant time taking a look at Chipotle. There is no consistency of management accountability. None. Zero. Some managers go above and beyond. Many others don't. And this is required behavior across any organization for maintaining the highest standards of quality control. So let's go into a little bit more. End of 2019. So going on 6 years ago, well, 5.5 years ago, an employee at a Chipotle location in New York has led to allegations of unlawful workplace practices. The employee, who worked at a Chipotle grill in Manhattan, New York City, was allegedly fired for making complaints about problems in their workplace and for attempting to unionize. The NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, filed a complaint against Chipotle December 12, 2019. So according to the general counsel for the NLRB, a manager at a location in New York City threatened workers, allegedly told employees they'd be fired if they organized with the union. Oh my God. And the manager also implied that the employees may be subjected to physical violence as well. Are you shitting me? Employees at this location in New York City were also allegedly told that they would be promoted if they gave information about who was organizing. Look, this isn't modern day Russia and one of the most toxic, horrific cultures imaginable. This is a Chipotle in New York City. The union that's involved in the Chipotle case is the Service Employees International Union, 32BJ. It's the same union that has been attempting to unionize McDonald's workers. So there's been legal setbacks in the McDonald's union organizing because the chain restaurant is operated as a franchise. Chipotle is different. Chipotle, on the other hand, is owned and operated by one single corporate employer, which would make the process of unionizing for its employees much more easy to implement than the McDonald's situation. So it is against US labor law for an employer to retaliate against workers who engage in union organizing activities. This may be news to Chipotle and their vaunted leadership team, but if an employer is found to have intimated or retaliated against its employees who are trying to organize, the employer may be sued for violating US labor law. No shit. Or, I'm sorry, should I say, duh. If an employee has had this type of experience and suffered a financial setback as a result, an attorney might be able to help the employee file a complaint against their employer. An attorney may also help the employee to pursue payment for damages. So again, when you layer all of these dysfunctional and toxic behaviors of Chipotle's brain trust, their leadership team, no wonder that over time they're starting to have gotten an incredibly negative reputational brand. And that's what led me, after years and years of watching this happen, ultimately led me to say, I need to shine the light on Chipotle for you, the audience. So let's go to February 2020. So we're inching closer to, we're now 5+ years away. The Unsavory Side of Food with Integrity report, this is the National Consumers League, details management practices that lead to worker abuse and calls into question protocols that Chipotle put in place after food safety crises. Remember, the crises that I mentioned most recently went back to 2008, but the ones I touched upon were 2018 to 2019. Okay, so after dozens of outbreaks of foodborne illness incidents over the past 4 years, so going back to 2015, Chipotle gave lip service to reforms in their work practices, but the fast casual restaurant has continued to engage, even now, to current day, in management practice that have led to abuses of workers that may and often do create food safety risk for consumers. This study in 2020 has found. Scores of employees interviewed for the study reported management pressure to work fast and without following proper food safety procedures. Let's kind of touch on that because this is kind of disgusting. Just so you know what's going on at Chipotle, in case you didn't. One worker being pressured to work while sick, even after the worker vomited in their shift. They were forced to continue working. Undercooked chicken being served to a customer because the grill cookout in place had not been properly trained. So poorly trained staff serving raw chicken. That's called salmonella and can poison people and kill them in extreme instances. Workers were pressured to work so fast that during lunch and dinner rushes, they often flipped over cutting boards used to cut raw meat, then reused the boards without washing them. Oh my God. Oh my God. One worker who cooked food had to clean feces off the floor or ceiling of a bathroom multiple times without use or wearing a hazmat suit for adequate protection. And then went back to serving food. Poop, food. Food, poop. Poop, food. Pressure to work without stopping. No time left to wash their hands for hours on end. Are you kidding me? In this report, The Unsavory Side of Food with Integrity, Chipotle workers told researchers that their managers often knew when supposedly independent audits were coming because other managers or field leaders who had undergone the inspections often tipped them off. What is the whole point of independent audits of workplace safety and proper quality control measures when dealing with food, workers reported that managers relaxed the rules outside inspection periods, and then they tightened up to adhere to the food safety protocols only when inspections were forthcoming. So the findings of this report call into question the effectiveness of measures that Chipotle has put into place to solve the food safety crisis they had going back a few years, said Sally Greenberg, executive director of the National Consumers League, which co-authored this report. If Chipotle executive management and the Food Safety Advisory Council are responsible for making sure that this program is implemented effectively for the purpose of keeping the public safe, they've been asleep at the wheel. So organizers and researchers spoke to hundreds of Chipotle workers that undertook formal interviews with 47 workers at 25 stores in New York City. The interviews and statements form the basis of the report, which also included analysis of a variety of corporate filings, press reports, and other publicly available documents. Listen to this. We chose to blow the whistle on these practices and abuses because our Chipotle managers did not listen to us. Jeremy Espinal, a Chipotle worker, said, "It's a pressure-packed workplace where supervisors intimidate you and retaliate against you." Holy crap. Does Chipotle have a checklist of all of the worst things that you could do to literally destroy your reputational brand and just say, yep, did that, did that, did that? I am speaking out, says this employee, because I want to make Chipotle a better place to work and a better place for customers to eat. Jahaira Garcia, another Chipotle worker, said, "This job is how I support myself, how I help my father out with expenses at home, and how I'm able to partly pay for my school fees." So this is the relevant union I mentioned, the 32BJ president, Kyle Bragg, thanked the National Consumers League for working with the union and thanked Chipotle's workers for their courage in speaking up, speaking out. "I believe that these workers are Chipotle's best assets," Bragg said, although you probably wouldn't know that if you ever surveyed Chipotle's leadership team. They can put the integrity back into food with integrity. Give them a voice on the job, and they will help Chipotle achieve the lofty ideals of its marketing. So I'm not going to go through all of the report's findings in detail, but all of these resources I'm referencing will be in the description of the video below for you to reference later on if you're so inclined. So we're inching forward. May 19th, 2020, former Chipotle employees say order not to speak Spanish only applied to her. This is a fascinating story. And you talk about the opposite of DE&I initiatives, talk about punishing somebody because of their culture. I'm sorry, you can't make up this toxic workplace dysfunction. So, a former food preparer for a Chipotle Mexican Grill is suing the restaurant chain, alleging that she was wrongfully fired in 2019 in retaliation for her complaining of discrimination that included in her Chipotle's location, she was banned from speaking Spanish on the job, and then that ban, not to speak Spanish, only applied to her. A Chipotle representative did not immediately reply to a request for comment on Olga Torres, that's the employee, in Los Angeles Superior Court, where she filed her complaint, where she was seeking unspecified damages. So this is an employee at a Chipotle in Los Angeles. Chipotle hired Torres as a food preparer, February 2018, at one of its stores in Glendale. 5 months later, the employee suffered a disabling work-related injury to her left hand, the lawsuit claimed. Torres says she told her supervisor about her injury and was seeking medical treatment, but she still had lingering pain and her request for work accommodations were denied. Unbelievable. Torres complained to her boss that the second injury occurred because she was not given the assistance she requested when she first got hurt, but she was ignored. the lawsuit alleged. Through her employment, Torres was chided, punished, reprimanded by her coworkers because she could not speak fluent English, according to court papers. She alleged during the lawsuit that the general manager and cook manager yelled at her daily for speaking Spanish and singled her out in banning her from talking in her native language. Fearing she could misunderstand what the cook manager said during conversations, Torres says she asked her coworkers to interpret what he was saying. The cook manager reprimanded her and said she was wasting her colleagues' time. This demeaning and insulting treatment caused the plaintiff, Torres, to suffer emotional injuries caused an anxiety attack. Okay. Torres claims in her suit that she told the GM that her doctor said work-related stress caused her anxiety attack. But he replied that that was her personal problem. Listen to this. I suffered an anxiety attack because I'm being consistently, repeatedly abused in my workplace environment, and the general manager is saying that's a you problem. Shortly after the employee, Torres, suffered her anxiety attack, Chipotle cut back her work hours from 40 to 16 weekly hours. And then she was fired in February 2019 at the age of 54. She suffered severe and profound pain and emotional distress. Way to go, Chipotle. Aren't you special? So what do you do? What do I do as a coach when I'm teaching organizations how to build amazing workplace cultures? First thing I do is I go and I do an audit where I take a snapshot of the existing prevailing workplace culture. And one way to do that is to gauge what employees have said about their time spent working there. And one way to aggregate is to go to employee review sites, understanding this, that we know that there's inherent bias in online employee review sites, like the one I'm going to share with you now, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, in this case, Indeed, because we know that the people who go as employees online to submit employee reviews, pretty much there's two ends of the spectrum. It's either an incredibly favorable experience, or maybe the organization pays them or encourages them or rewards them from doing a great review, or to speak up and say, I had a horrible experience. So let's go to Indeed. Listen to this. Nearly 20,000 employee reviews on a 5-star scale. 1 is low, 5 is exceptional. The average of 20,000 employee reviews was a 3.4. That is horrifically low. In case you're unaware, I've been doing this for 17, going on 18 years. That is horrifically low. So let's look at the different categories of responses. So the results are based on 25,606 employee responses to Indeed's work well-being survey at Chipotle. The aggregate score on a scale of 1 to 100 is 65. That's failing, or in this case, below average. Happiness. How enjoyable people find their day-to-day life at Chipotle, below average. Satisfaction, how content people feel with the way things are at Chipotle, below average. Stress-free, low. How meaningful people find their work, sense of purpose, below average. So, at the time, CEO Scott Boatwright, 46% approval rating, 46%. You can't make this up. This is the result of what I've been sharing with you. Consistent lack of regard for employees and customers' health and well-being, of horrible corporate mandates and insensitivity and lack of trust and caring, no empathy. This is the manifestation of it. This is the logical outcome, is what we're seeing as we do this. So I'll even, just to kind of normalize the feedback and the data sets, let's go to Glassdoor, another highly reputable online employee review site. Chipotle, 21,000 reviews. Average score in a 5-star scale, 3.4. 53% would recommend Chipotle to a friend as an employer of choice. 53%. Not 60, not 70. Gosh forbid 80, 53%. You cannot fabricate this. You can't make this up. I'm not going to go into all the details, but you can see this is pretty consistently low employer reviews, even by ethnicity. Even by ethnicity. You've got a low of 2.9 for Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders, all the way up to a high of 3.4 for Asian and Indigenous America or Alaska Natives. So it doesn't matter about how people are treated by ethnicity. Across the board, they're low. So now I like to go to Reddit and look at different Chipotle employee and prior employee experiences in the aggregate. So this is from 10 months ago. So we're literally creeping up to current day. This video is being recorded Sunday, August 10th, 2025. So 10 months ago, I did it. I left my experience as a Chipotle employee. So I just want to kind of share. Hey everyone, I worked at a Chipotle for about 2 months, and at first I liked it a lot. Free food, nice hiring manager, yada yada. As time went on, one of my managers was a huge dude, 600 pounds. He did drugs in the bathroom, never held clothes, first red flag. Then he left, we were left with a single manager, second red flag. As I worked more, all of the rules and regulations were so extreme, all for the same pay as someone who worked at a McDonald's. No offense to McDonald's. Then we got a new manager who obviously had no ambition or desire to work. She ended up quitting after 3 weeks. They found someone to train. She was the slowest employee, ignored us when we said we ran out of stuff. During my last shift, before this person left, we were out of the barbecue, the barbacoa, the chicken, the brisket, and the steak for 15 minutes all at the same time. Customers would literally scream at us if they thought the price was wrong on their food, and we weren't allowed to defend ourselves or anything. You see this complaint actually time and time again. I've looked at thousands of employee reviews to prepare this video. And consistently, employees always say that they're berated by customers who claim that they're being overcharged, that there's no measurement spoon, so that they have to kind of just guesstimate what a standard serving size is. Okay. Customers would scream at us. We couldn't defend ourselves. I was yelled at for putting not enough meat, then scolded by my manager for putting too much. All the younger employees just flirted with each other. It was like Love Island Chipotle edition. When our manager, the one who actually stayed, got on then, the employees ignored her. I also found that I was making $1 to $2 more than those who had been working there since the store opened back in the spring. Long story short, working at Chipotle was a constant migraine, and the smell you came home with paired with the layer of grime will not be missed. Rest in peace to my short but busy career at Chipotle. So I understand it's just one employee's rabid response. But if you look at this, you look at the quotes of other people who have had similar experiences, there's a consistency, a narrative thread, a narrative arc that goes through most employee comments about their experiences. Man, I'm hearing about Chipotle going down the drain. It used to be a hip spot to work for in the early 2000s. We had parties, prizes each month. We were encouraged to overstuff the food. Those were my college days. But it got so bad, this girl hated me because her crush talked to me like I was just there to work. Leave me alone. They're talking about that Love Island Chipotle reference. So this one from 10 months ago, I finally left after 3 years. I was there since before the current GM. She was great at first, but then she became so petty and toxic. That's what toxic workplaces do to even best employees. The daily stress and strain wears away. After 3 years, you'd think I'd get a nice send-off. But this employee who worked there 3 years, my last shift was absolute hell. The general manager was supposed to work with me during my last shift. She left an hour after I got there. We were short-staffed, and me and my other service manager were left to run the shift with people who would just talk and get high. They wouldn't even listen to us anymore. But I'm finally free. Somebody else writes in response, I was so sick of working short-staffed shifts. That's another thing. They talk about what the standard staffing is for a location of 5 to 6 or even more employees. That's what corporate claims are. But consistently you read about employees who experience working in a highly stressful experience of understaffed locations. And that's just constant. Chipotle to pay a $2.9 million settlement over violations of Seattle, Washington labor laws. So now we're going to last April. So we're now 15 or 16 months in the past. We're catching up. Chipotle Mexican Grill has agreed to pay $2.9 million to 1,853 employees across 8 locations in Seattle, Washington, as a settlement with the city over allegations of violating local rules on sick time and shift changes. The settlement represents the largest since the city's secure scheduling ordinance went into effect July 2017 in Seattle, as noted by the Seattle Office of Labor Standards. Does this surprise us? Just a rhetorical question. When you see the consistency of failure to run a corporation in highest of ethical standards and morality, that you treat your employees like feces, that you treat your customers in such a way that your business practices literally threaten to make them mentally and physically ill. The failure of employers to pay employees what they're legally owed, wage theft, affects workers across industries. According to a Seattle Times report earlier this month, this is 2024, no industry generates more wage theft complaints in Washington state than the food service industry. So allegations specifically against Chipotle, outlets in Seattle include, here's what this lawsuit, this $2 million settlement included: failure to provide paid sick and safe time accrued at correct rates, retaliation against an employee for calling out sick, retaliation against an employee for declining to work or consent to a shift change made with fewer than 14 days notice, and retaliation against an employee for requesting not to be scheduled at certain times or in conflict with a second job. As part of this settlement, the fast casual chain agreed to develop and implement a written secure scheduling ordinance policy, the Office of Labor Standards release said. Do you really think Chipotle, based on just these examples I'm sharing with you, would honor that written secure scheduling ordinance? Just out of, I just ask it. According to a statement from Chief Corporate Affairs Officer Lori Shallow, Chipotle has implemented a number of compliance initiatives, including adding new and improved timekeeping technology to help our restaurants as a result of the investigation. This isn't the 1980s, nor is it the 2000s. It's 2024. Are you effing kidding me? Listen to this corporate gobbledygook speak. We look forward to continuing to promote the goals of predictable scheduling and access to work hours for those who want them. Really? Okay. The statement noted that Chipotle offers employees 3 paid sick days with no waiting period, calling this beyond their standard practice for most industries, and that the average hourly wage for the company's workers in Seattle is $20.20. Seattle's paid sick and safe time ordinance requires employers of more than 250 full-time workers worldwide to allow those workers to bank 1 hour of sick safe time for every 30 hours they work. Seattle's current minimum wage for businesses with at least 501 employees is $19.97. I would be speechless if it weren't for the fact that this is standard operating procedure at Chipotle Mexican Grill. But on a sadder note, it's also standard operating procedure at far too many organizations, not just in food service or retail industries, but across corporate America still in August of 2025. As you may have seen from my last video last Friday, where I did an assessment of the CEO of AT&T demanding now that all its 100,000 plus employees return to work 5 days a week. So let's move on. Chipotle employees are upset with concerning shift in store policy. It hurts my soul. So here we are. This is August 5th, 2025. Hello, current times. This report, filed by Kristen Lawrence. Many grocers and restaurants strive to minimize food waste, but it's not always possible due to new store policy aimed at reducing liability in the event of a foodborne illness. So, in a Chipotle Reddit feed, a worker stated that before the policy change was implemented, Chipotle locations, the store specifically, would reuse cold products such as tomatoes, cheese, lettuce, and fajita veggies left over from the previous night. The manager would tell employees to relabel the products for the day of instead of discarding them. But with the updated rules, the store can't reuse any leftovers, resulting in more than 50 pounds of food going to waste in some cases. This is mind-blowing to me that a business would encourage this, the poster said, an individual employee of Chipotle. I understand not wanting to use expired product. What I don't understand is why the sudden change after all this time of doing it. I've worked in a restaurant for almost 4 years, and we've always just relabeled it for that day and made sure it was first in, first out. So the stuff that was oldest got used most quickly. So photos taken at this Chipotle location revealed just how much prepped food was trashed, along with about a dozen containers that held products. It hurts my soul to see all the pico in the trash, one person commented. Maybe if Chipotle didn't make their employees throw out all this perfectly good food every day, they wouldn't need to also make you give me the world's tiniest scoop of guacamole and charge me $3.85 for it, another shared. Why is food waste so concerning? Earth.org reported that around 1/3 of the food produced for human consumption is wasted every year. 1/3. That amounts to $1 trillion worth of food being thrown out, or enough to feed 3 billion starving people. Food waste also squanders about 25% of water supply from the uneaten products, and the land, fertilizer, and labor are also put under unnecessary strain. Additionally, when food decomposes in landfills, it releases a potent greenhouse gas called methane, which is a significant contributor to global warming. So, when corporations like Chipotle introduce policies that encourage food waste, it drives up costs for consumers and harms the environment. So what is Chipotle doing about this? According to the company, it's launched a program called Mindful Prep, which teaches staff how to reduce food waste during preparation. In addition, Chipotle claims that there have been initiatives that are aimed at reducing packaging. Chipotle reports that these policies have had a substantial positive impact on waste reduction. Chipotle has also introduced composting programs and achieved a record with 100% of new restaurant openings participating in the Harvest program, which gives food, leftover food, to local charities. So understanding that food waste is a complex issue. Stores like Chipotle have to ensure that products are safe to eat before donating them. However, other organizations that Chipotle could easily, if they cared, easily emulate best practice. Other stores like Kroger and Trader Joe's have demonstrated that it is in fact possible to rescue food and distribute it when policies are followed. In the past, Kroger and Trader Joe's have donated thousands of pounds of perishable food to nonprofits when their freezers, for example, malfunction during storms. So, just some concern. Chipotle, Starbucks workers are citing burnout. Why? This is from April 26th, 2024. While restaurant operators continue to struggle with both labor costs and employee retention, the food service industry may very well have deeper employee side problems. According to a study of Glassdoor reviews just released from BBAdegree.org, which is an organization that provides resources for prospective business executives seeking higher education. Workers in the restaurant and food service industry are complaining about burnout the most of any industry. Let's get to Chipotle. Chipotle Mexican Grill scored a 97.72% out of 100 on the organization's burnout rating score. Only one organization, Progressive Insurance, had a higher rating of employee burnout. Stressful workplace culture is the most common word used to describe Chipotle's workplace environment, according to Glassdoor employee reviews. None of this happens in isolation. This is manifest destiny for organizations who reap what they sow. Horrible business practices, horrible treatment of employees, inconsistent standards, operational inefficiencies, quality measures. You've kind of seen through this video time and time again how this all invariably leads to horrible reputational branding. The Chipotle employee experience is miserable. This is 1 month ago. This is in July. Well, I don't think this is entirely new, says this employee in this Reddit thread dedicated to Chipotle employment experiences. While I don't think this is entirely new, the greed of Chipotle honestly sickens me. They'll understaff stores and then act like it's totally fine. Orders from the top will say that you only need 4 people, even when we're being absolutely bombarded with nonstop customers, lines out the door, mobile orders piling up, people yelling at us like we're the ones in charge. Who bears the brunt of horrible corporate policies? Always frontline staff who interact with customers who are experiencing the result of those horrible corporate dictates. What makes it worse is that customers have no understanding of what's going on at Chipotle. They walk in and immediately complain we're out of stuff, or the line's too long, or they're not getting enough food for what they're paying. Some of them walk in with this attitude like they're royalty, and we're just supposed to bow to whatever they want. Just recently, I had a customer say she was fine paying double for honey chicken and demanded another scoop. She's under the impression that once you pay for double meat, you can get as much as you want, which isn't true. And if you've ever been inside a Chipotle now and you know this, you have to certainly have some kind of compassion for their poor employees. When we tried to politely explain this, she flipped out and started treating everyone like dirt. And this happens all the time. I don't think our location is skimping on giving out ingredients in what customers order. We do our best. But like every other job, corporate is very real. When people say it's not coming out of your check as an employee of Chipotle, you could give us a little bit more food in our order, I don't care. If it's between making you, the customer, happy or keeping my job with a manager who's looking over their shoulder, berating them when they think that they've given away too much food in an order, I'm choosing my job and continued employment every time. What really bothers me, says this employee, is Chipotle constantly contradicting itself. They'll say provide great customer service, but forcing us to operate understaffed locations, restricting our ability to effectively serve our customers, monitoring the portion sizes we give out under such tight control that it just triggers customers to get angry. This makes 0 sense. So, and then this employee or former employee goes on to say that there's also horrible hiring practices, the lack of quality employees. None of this should be shocking. Of course, the company will always prioritize profit over its workers. That's not a woke take. That's just how it is to work there. It sucks working for a company that talks about integrity, but treats its employees like numbers. And all the frustration you feel when something is out of, or your bowl looks smaller than usual, that's corporate. That's not us, the employees. Stop taking it out on us, the people, making minimum wage. It's literally 2 working class people fighting over the decisions of billionaires at Chipotle corporate. Okay. That's the sentiment that I've seen over over. So look, this was my experience working at Chipotle for 3 years. Glad it seems to only be getting worse after I left. Don't forget that field leaders, general managers, and other higher-ups will access the security cameras to make sure everyone is in position for lunch rush. No exceptions. And these comments go on and on and on. So lastly, the spoons. This is 2 days ago on a Reddit employee thread. The spoon should be serving size spoons that hold exactly 4 ounces. So a customer won't complain about portion size. We basically just pick and choose when to charge for extra rice. There's no clear rule on how much is too much. The 35 locations, they don't have standard measuring spoons. Are you kidding me? As a new hire, I'm lost on when we're supposed to charge for extra cheese, rice, sour cream, and other extras. If you're confused as a customer, stand at the back of the line, because guess what? Employees are confused as well. On top of that, every store is different. Oh, God, talking about consistency and quality control. I will have a manager come in from another store and tell me how at this store, they don't charge for extra anything. While my job, the busier Chipotle in my area, have to pay for it. It just causes confusion. Customers yell at me when I can't make them quesaritos or quesadillas on the line, while other Chipotle locations apparently do it for them. It's just confusing. And then the employee goes on to talk about the standardization of a McDonald's experience. You go to McDonald's anywhere in the world, the experience is identical. Talk about consistently applied business operating procedures. So yeah, there you have it. I hope you have found this video to be enlightening, not just about Chipotle in the abstract, but the examples that we can glean from what to do, what has been done in Chipotle, in terms of what not to do in your organization from a two-part perspective. How to treat your employees with respect, caring, compassion, empathy, and how to therefore take care of your customers. If you've liked this video, please do me a solid. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you think. And if you like this and the other videos where I shine a light on organizations doing great things for great workplace culture and treating their employees well, and companies that are not treating their employees well, please subscribe to my channel and let me know what you think of the videos that are here. I wish you all the best of luck in your business leadership. Take care.